Over the years, big band writers have developed a pretty unique vocabulary of special effects. Let's look at how to play some of them.
Outside the jazz band, you'd rarely use the tongue to stop the airstream, but it's actually the norm when playing big band music. The tongue stop produces a hard, precise cutoff. Dot, 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 dot. On the saxophone, simply put the tongue to the reed, abruptly stopping the airflow and vibration. For the brass, seal off the airflow by putting the tip of the tongue to the spot where normal tonguing occurs. The tongue stop is generally not appropriate in soft legato passages or for the cutoff of a soft fermata.
For the trumpet, a lot of the special effects involve partially depressing the valves, which is called using half valves. This enables the player to slide between notes. When you first try this, you'll notice that the sound is softer and less centered, so you have to add extra air to compensate. You might need to experiment to determine which valves to depress and just how far. Most of the time, your music won't indicate when to use half valves, so you have to listen and practice.
The fall is one of the most common effects found in written music for the big band. This effect involves playing the note and falling off of it. Bow. The fall then ends at a specific time, but without landing on a specific note or pitch. The short fall occurs on notes with a duration of 1 beat or less. For reeds, the short fall is created by slightly retracting the jaw. The trombones play the note, then slur down with the lips while moving the slide outward. Trumpets establish the pitch, then slur down with the lips. You can also partially depress the valves while descending. Here are several ways that you may see the short fall written. Usually the shape of the mark will suggest how long the short fall should be played. The long fall generally occurs on notes longer than 1 beat. For reeds, the long fall is a descending chromatic slur which fades out toward the bottom. For the brass instruments, the long fall is executed the same as the short fall. Due to its longer duration, the beginnings and release points of the long fall must be clearly understood or clearly marked on the part. The rule of thumb for the long fall is to hold the note for the first half of the note's value, then fall for the second half of the note's value, or hold half, fall half. In order for the fall to be heard, blow. Otherwise, the effect may be lost. On really long falls like those of 2 to 4 measures, establish the pitch, hold for 3 to 4 beats, and then fall evenly for the desired duration. If you decide to depart from the basic hold half, fall half rule, everyone should mark the note indicating when the fall should start and end. This timing is critical on long falls, and everyone must stay together. Listening to your lead player will also help keep the falls together and provide greater unity of sound throughout the band. Also be sure to maintain volume throughout the entire fall.
A drop into a note is closely related to the short fall. It's done in much the same way, except that you don't establish a definite pitch when you start, and at the end you land on a written note. The drop starts anywhere from a third to an octave above and a half beat before the written note. When playing the drop, it's critical to land on the written note at exactly the right time. It's easy to hit the note a little early or a little late, so just focus on the written note as your rhythmic target.
The doit is the same as the fall, except rather than forcing the pitch down, the pitch is forced up. It's quite common in big band music, but also heard frequently in cartoon music, motion pictures, and TV commercials. Depending on the music or your conductor, the doit may end at a specific time, but does not land on a specific note or pitch. For reeds, the doit is played by establishing the pitch, maintaining a firm embouchure and breath support, while ascending chromatically and slurring the notes. Brass players establish the pitch and slur up, also maintaining a firm embouchure and breath support. While doing this, the trombones use the slide against the grain. And the trumpets slur up and can also partially depress the valves. Like the fall, it's important to sustain the volume throughout and maybe even increase volume a bit. Doits may not be precise or pretty, but they're fun to play.
The squeeze, which is also called a rip, is performed by sliding up to a target pitch. The starting note of the squeeze can either be an established note or an indefinite pitch. This example shows how a squeeze is written when no definite starting pitch is desired. When a squeeze starts with an indefinite pitch, you'll see an X note head for the starting note. You might also see this as a note in parentheses. It's done on the saxophone with slurred chromatics and no real pitch definition. With the slide on trombone, and with half vowels on trumpet. If the arranger wants a definite starting pitch to a squeeze, he'll write a regular note head. Here's what that sounds like. Rhythmically, the most important note is the target note that you're squeezing to. Here's some examples of squeezes played by the ensemble. Occasionally, the squeeze will come out of a long fall. In this case, simply combine the two effects. Be sure that the change of direction between the downward fall and the upward squeeze is played together throughout the ensemble. And remember to maintain volume throughout the whole effect.
The glissando is a fast run that connects two notes together. Usually you wait until just before the target note to start the glissando, and sometimes you'll need to mark when it starts so it'll be played the same by everyone. Now, here's what a glissando sounds like.
This is a standard bend. It's played by establishing the written note, lowering the pitch approximately 1/2 step, and returning to the original pitch, all within the time value of that note. The bend into a note, sometimes called a scoop, begins with the pitch lipped down about 1/2 step. For saxes, bending a note requires a combination of retracting the jaw and sometimes using the fingers. The trombones use the slide, and the trumpets use the lip and sometimes half valves to lower the pitch.
The flip is an effect written for brass players and is basically an exaggeration of the turn. On the trombone, the flip is played using the slide and the lip. On the trumpet, the lip and half vowels are used. Listen to your lead player in order to make sure that you match their interpretation.
The proper use of vibrato in the big band depends on the player's knowledge and understanding of musical styles. Early big bands typically used a fast, wide vibrato, which would sound incorrect in more recent styles. Listen to recordings and pay close attention to the subtleties of the vibrato. For reed players, the vibrato is done by moving the jaw as though saying the syllables ya, ya, ya. Trumpet players use either the ya-ya-ya technique or a front-to-back movement of the right hand. Trombone players typically use the slide. When you see the letters NV or dead tone written on your part, this means no vibrato.
The basic shake for brass players is just a lip trill between the written pitch and the next higher overtone on the instrument. That's the next highest note that you can lip up to without changing the slide position or valve combination. For reed players, the shake is a trill between the written pitch and a minor third higher unless otherwise marked. The regular shake as written in this example would be played about as fast as 16th notes, but not in time. When a slow wide shake is desired, it'll probably be written on the part, or the shape of the marking will suggest the slow wide shake. A slow wide shake can be anywhere from a fifth to an octave or more above the written note, and usually speeds up at the end. When a group of players in the band has a shake written, it's important that the speed of the shake is about the same. Try to be sure that releases of all shakes are together. Using a tongue stop here is particularly helpful.
When you see layback written on your part, it indicates a slight stretching of the time. This is achieved by the horns literally playing figures behind the time, while the rhythm section keeps the time constant. Without this consistency in the rhythm section, what you end up with is dragging. Here are some things to remember. The tempo needs to remain constant. The horn section's got to stay together, regardless of how far they choose to lay back. Lead player's interpretation needs to stay consistent, and section players must follow the lead players. The band will now demonstrate this on a couple of figures. We'll play each one first as written, then laid back. Check out recordings of the Count Basie Orchestra for great examples of laying back.
Subtone refers to a warm, breathy saxophone sound. You can achieve this sound by relaxing the jaw, which will deaden the reed. So listen and experiment. But be careful not to overblow during this technique, because you might wind up with a squawk.
Flutter tonguing is done by fluttering the tongue on the roof of the mouth like this, while playing the written note. It takes a lot more air to flutter tongue a note than to play it straight. Some people can't flutter tongue at all. If you can't flutter tongue, play a growl instead.
A growl is almost the complete opposite of a subtone. This raunchy tone is created on the brass and reed instruments, usually by humming or growling as you play. The interval between the hum and the pitch on your horn determines how nasty the growl will sound. This effect is usually played loud and can be found in a wide variety of music, ranging from Duke Ellington's brass section to your favorite rock sax player.
If you're a trumpet or trombone player, it's not uncommon to see plunger written on your part. This is the only mute that you can pick up at your local hardware store. There are several notations that go along with using the plunger. A plus sign means closed, and an O means open. In the closed position, be careful not to close the plunger too far, or the pitch will change and the note could be lost. Sometimes there's a combination of the plus sign and the O, which means they want a wah type sound. In fact, it might just say wah over the note. Half plunger is another common notation. Cover the bell just enough to get the sound you want. If you don't have a plunger, you can use your hand over the bell instead.
Just remember to play through the horn and use plenty of air. Along with the plunger, sometimes a soloist will flutter tongue or growl to get a nastier, raspy sound.
A writer wanting a softer, slightly muffled sound from brass players will sometimes write hand over bell, or HOB. You'll also find plunger notation, the plus sign, the O, and the wah, used to indicate hand position.
When writers want the brass instruments to be played very soft or indirect, they will write in hat or in stand. These effects help keep backgrounds from covering up a vocalist or soloist. Since you're playing soft and leaning forward, be careful not to restrict the airflow. Concentrate on keeping the air moving to maintain a full sound. If your music says in hat and you don't have the right equipment, just play in the stand.
Ghost notes are found in jazz notation and can be written either as an X or a note head in parentheses. Ghost notes are felt rather than heard and can be used to help swing a line. By listening to jazz artists like Charlie Parker and Clifford Brown, you can hear lots of examples of ghosted notes. On the saxophone, you can ghost notes by backing off on the airstream while dampening part of the reed's vibration with the tip of the tongue. On the trombone and trumpet, back off on the airstream while barely playing the ghosted notes. For trumpet players, using half valves can also work.
Now here is Sergeant First Class Vince Norman's Porch Swingin', which contains many of the embellishments and special effects covered in this section.